Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. At UFC 289, Amanda Nunes retired in the cage after her victory over Irene Aldana, leaving the women's bantamweight and the women's featherweight titles completely vacant. And a lot of people have been discussing mainly what's going to happen with the women's bantamweight division, because we already know what's going to happen with the women's featherweight division. It's going to be dissolved. It's been non-existent for years. But in discussions surrounding the women's bantamweight division and a potential vacant bantamweight title fight, Julianna Pena has been at the top of the list. She was at UFC 289. She was originally supposed to be fighting in the main event at UFC 289. And now she's kind of gone on a little media tour. She was making some comments on Saturday night. And now she did an interview with Ariel Helwani on the MMA Hour. We're going to take a look at some clips of some of the things she said. And she's been saying some delusional things in the media. We're going to take a look at some of the things that she has said. But also, when I started to really think about the division as a whole, and I started to think about where does Julianna Pena fit into the bantamweight division, I realized she is very similar to Colby Covington. And we are going to discuss that in this video as well. We're going to look at the clips from the MMA Hour. We're going to react to those. We're going to discuss how Julianna Pena is very similar to Colby Covington. Even though there's some key similarities, there's also some key differences. And we're also going to discuss what I believe will inevitably happen with the women's bantamweight division. And we'll talk about the featherweight division a little bit in this video. So first off, what is the backstory of Amanda Nunes versus Julianna Pena, in case you don't know? They originally fought at UFC 269 in December of 2021. And you go back to that fight. This fight was actually rescheduled because they were originally scheduled for, I believe it was UFC 265 in August. You had Amanda Nunes, who came down with COVID, and I think she had some injuries as well. She had to pull out of the fight. It got rescheduled for UFC 269, and Amanda Nunes went into that fight. She wasn't 100%. She was still dealing with issues from COVID, and I also think she wasn't taking Julianna Pena seriously. I did an entire video on this. I'll link it down in the description. I literally did this video like a year ago, but all that analysis still stays true to this day. But essentially what happened in this fight, Amanda Nunes came in not 100%, not taking Julianna Pena seriously, and she lost. And she got finished in the second round by Julianna Pena. First round, Amanda Nunes won. Second round, she started to fade. Julianna Pena put it on her. And then Julianna Pena got a rear naked choke with no hooks in. And Amanda Nunes essentially quit in the fight. She tapped really fast. She didn't even fight the hands. It literally looked rigged. Honestly, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It literally looked rigged. That fight looked rigged. I'm not saying it was. But anyway, fast forward to UFC 277 in July of 2022. We have a rematch between Amanda Nunes and Julianna Pena on the pretext that UFC built this fight up, that basically Amanda Nunes wasn't taking her seriously. Amanda Nunes wasn't 100% going into that fight. And then you get the rematch at UFC 277, a main event of UFC 277. And Julianna Pena gets the brakes beat off her by Amanda Nunes. I think one judge had it 50-43, and I think the other judges had it 50-44. So you had one judge giving Amanda Nunes 2 10-8 rounds. That is rare in MMA. That is reserved for dominant rounds. And Amanda Nunes just beat her from bell to bell, destroyed her, won her title back, even though you had Joe Rogan saying she's in real trouble here multiple times on the ground. Amanda Nunes made Julianna Pena look like she did not even belong in the UFC, and definitely as she didn't even belong in that fight with Amanda Nunes, even though she came in as the champion. So what happened after UFC 277? Well, I thought the UFC was going to find another contender to feed to Amanda Nunes like they have been for the last few years, but then all of a sudden, a couple months ago, we get an announcement: Amanda Nunes, Julianna Pena 3, UFC 289. That was supposed to be the main event of this past weekend. And I thought it was crazy. I'm like, wait a second. So she got 50-43'd, and she's getting a rematch, and she looked horrible in that last fight at UFC 277. I mean, she was getting plucked and dropped and out-grappled and destroyed on the ground, and she's getting a rematch. She's getting a trilogy fight. But at the same time, I was thinking to myself, well, there's really not a lot of contenders in the women's bantamweight division. And you go back to before she got her first title shot. When she got her first title shot, she was on a one-fight winning streak, which isn't even an actual streak. She won one fight. She beat Sarah McMahon, and she submitted her at UFC 257. The fight before that, she lost to Jeraine Durandamine via finish. So the division, that just shows you how lackluster the division was. Amanda Nunes at that point was just fighting anyone. Julianna Pena just happened to be at the top of that list, even though she had won only one fight, and it wasn't really deserving of a title shot. But it was crazy to me that they were booking this trilogy. But nonetheless, Julianna Pena pulls out of the fight because I think she broke a rib and she's unable to fight at UFC 289. Irene Aldana steps in. Irene Aldana was supposed to fight Raquel Pennington in a main event. They pull Irene Aldana from that fight, put her in UFC 289 main event. Amanda Nunes goes out there, beats the brakes off Irene Aldana for 5 rounds, and then retires in the cage. And immediately afterwards, because Julianna Pena's in the crowd talking crap, she's tweeting out stuff saying she retired because she's scared of me, and she's just screaming, she's booing from the audience. There was clips circulating online. But now she's kind of gone on a media tour where she's talking. She did an interview with Ariel Helwani, and we're going to take a look at some of those clips in a minute. But one of the key things that she has kind of alluded to and outright said in the tweet is that Amanda Nunes retired because she's scared of me. And Ariel Helwani asked her flat out, do you believe Amanda Nunes is scared of you and that's why she retired? And here was Julianna Pena's answer.
I would say that, she has to earn her money the hard way. You know what I mean? Like she knows, what's at risk. A tap.
Wow.
She knows that she's going to be in there for a long night. And when she was at the press conference with Irene, she said, "Oh, I'm so glad that Irene is now in the fight because it's less heavy for me."
So there you hear Pena answer the question directly from Ariel Helwani. Is Nunes scared of you and that's why she is retiring? Do you truly believe that? And she essentially, I'm a little bit putting words in her mouth, but she essentially says, no, she's not scared of me, but she knows she's in for a fight if she fights me. She knows she's going to take some damage if she fights me, and she doesn't want that. And she started pulling out pictures. First off, why does she have printed out pictures, black and white pictures of Amanda Nunes, the damage she suffered at UFC 277? Because that's what she starts holding up. But the more I was listening and the more I was really thinking about it, I was thinking Julianna Pena actually has a point. Amanda Nunes by no means is scared of Julianna Pena. And also another point Julianna Pena makes in the interview that I don't have the clip for, she says, look, Amanda Nunes has had a foot out the door for years. And the more I started to think about what Julianna Pena was saying, I think it's accurate, actually. You have Amanda Nunes who has been coasting for years. Excluding Julianna Pena, look at the Irene Aldana fight. Took virtually no damage. Go back to the Megan Anderson fight at UFC 259. No damage, first round finish. Look at the Felicia Spencer fight. No real damage. Her last competitive fight that she still won rather dominantly was against Germaine de Randamie. And I honestly believe Amanda Nunes has been coasting for years and has been basically going in, showing up for a paycheck. She knows she's going to win. She knows the skill gap is so far between her and the rest of the division that she's just showing up for a check, and she knows she's got easy wins in front of her. And she knows Julianna Pena, say what you will about her skill set, but Julianna Pena does come to fight. And I truly believe that Amanda Nunes doesn't want that. I'm not saying she doesn't want the Julianna Pena fight because she's scared by any means. But I do believe when Amanda Nunes looks and says, okay, I'm going to have to fight Julianna Pena again, I don't like her to begin with, and now I'm going to take some damage in this fight because regardless if I beat the brakes off her, she's going to throw strikes. She's not going to just sit there like Irene Aldana not throwing anything. So as crazy as it sounds, and I know she's exaggerating by saying she's tweeting out, Nunes is scared of me, but I do believe there is a grain of truth to that. There is a grain of truth that Nunes does not want to take any more damage. That's clearly why she's retiring. She doesn't want to fight. She doesn't want to take damage, and she wants to spend time with her family. And therefore, if she's fighting Julianna Pena, she's going to have to, go back to another 8 to 10 week training camp to defend her title again against a girl she doesn't like and have a build-up she doesn't like, and then take some damage even in a win when she can just hang out with her family. She's already collected plenty of paychecks. She has a decent amount of money, probably starting some business ventures of her own. Why fight Julianna Pena instead? And then you get to Ariel Helwani asking Julianna Pena, is this going to be a thorn in your side that you never got this trilogy? And Julianna Pena had this to say.
Like, do you think this will eat at you that you won't be able to, win the series?
No, because as far as I'm concerned, I still have a one-up on her, okay? She didn't finish me. I was literally coming at her the entire time. I ran out of time. When it brass tacks, when it all comes down to things, when she was supposed to be, the greatest of all time, she tapped.
Okay.
And she was asking for help to get out of there. So like I said, a finish is better than a scorecard. She couldn't finish me. I'm not going to have a thorn on my side because as far as I'm concerned, I still have a win over her. If we're in the streets, she's dead. You know, she already died.
So there you hear Pena answering the question whether or not she's going to be upset basically by not getting this trilogy, and it's going to eat away at her. And when I went in to start making this video and I started listening to this interview, because I rarely listen to MMA interviews at all, let alone Julianna Pena's, I already had this premise in my head. Julianna Pena is delusional. And I started to listen to this clip and I started recording this clip, and there's a grain of salt of truth to this as well. Because Julianna Pena, while I think it's delusional to say, if we were in the streets, she would be dead. Because you're not in the streets. You're fighting in sanctioned MMA fights under Athletic Commission rules. She does have a point. She has a finish. She went out there and finished Amanda Nunes, made her quit in the fight. And in their fight at UFC 277, you didn't see any quit in Julianna Pena. Even though she was getting destroyed and dominated, there was no quit from Julianna Pena in that fight. So as much as I want to sit here and say she's delusional, and also I think she's lying a bit because I think it is a thorn in her side. She wants that trilogy desperately. You can tell in her heart she believes she can win that fight. I don't think she would win that fight. I think she'd get destroyed again. But she thinks she can get by on her heart and determination. And she thinks she can break the will of Amanda Nunes. But at the same time, she is kind of right here. She does have the finish. You know, if you got in 2 fights with somebody on the street, even though, again, this is a sanctioned MMA fight, and you finished one of them, you knocked them out or whatever it may be, you left them really hurt, and then the second time you guys got into a fight, you were losing, but somebody broke it up, it does have a comparison there. I'm not saying it's, you know, I 100% agree with it because I think she would get the break speed off her in the third fight. I think the first fight was borderline a fluke. You know, all the potential outcomes of that fight, basically because of what Nunes did coming into that fight, being ill-prepared, underestimating her, and then also coming in with the issues from COVID. I think that led to Pena winning, and I think 9 times out of 10, I think Amanda Nunes wins, but at the same time, she does have a point. Now, next, she's asked, what is going to happen with the 135-pound division, and this was her answer.
Is your next fight for the belt?
Absolutely it is. It's not like they have to like think like, what are we going to do? Who's next? Like I'm sitting in the front row. I'm right there. It's not like some, you know, rocket science. I was going to be fighting for the title that night. She retired. I'll be fighting for the title when I'm healed and ready to go.
Who do you think you'll be fighting?
I probably Raquel, you know, I think that I'll fight Raquel. She's done enough, you know, to deserve the title shot, and she's very durable. She's very tough.
So she's asked, will you be fighting for the title next? And then he asked, who do you think you'll be fighting? And Julianna Pena says yes, which I believe is accurate. I believe she will be fighting for the belt next. And she says, most likely I'll be fighting Raquel Pennington. Now, what they also go into later in the interview is Ariel suggests it could be Holly Holm with a win over Mayra Bueno Silva, which I think is a real possibility as well. But I think no matter what, Julianna Pena will be one half of the bantamweight title picture. I 100% believe she is getting a title shot next for that vacant belt. Whether it be against Raquel Pennington or Holly Holm with the win over Mayra Bueno Silva, I believe that Pena will be fighting for the bantamweight title. Now, one last clip I wanted to take a look at. Ariel asked her essentially about the hate she's been getting, some of the backlash she's been getting because of some of the kind of delusional remarks and cringy remarks she's been making, and asked her, you know, how do you feel about this backlash? And I believe this answer was very telling. Let's take a look at it.
I am always going to be me and be my authentic self. And if you don't like it, no problem. If you love it, that's great. I love that. But at the end of the day, I have a job. I have an obligation. I am in the entertainment business. And it's better that they talk about me, whether it's hate or love, than the other 700 fighters that are on the roster that they can't remember their names. Okay?
So there you hear Pena say, it's better that the fans talk about me, whether it's hate or love, rather than the other 700 fighters on the roster where they don't know their names. And this really opened my eyes, and I already kind of had this vibe before I even looked at this interview at all. But Julianna Pena is the female version of Colby Covington. There's some key differences, which I will point out in a second. But Julianna Pena has a personality that she is exaggerating to essentially get attention from the fan base, to essentially try to build her star power. Now, there's also some other comparisons you can make because Julianna Pena is going to get the next title shot, okay? She does not have a single win over a fighter that is currently on the UFC roster. Amanda Nunes is retired. Sarah McMahon, I believe she's retired. If not, she's gone from the UFC. Nico Montana, gone from the UFC. Kat Zingano, gone. Jessica Ai, retired. Do I need to go on? She doesn't have a single win against a fighter who is currently on the roster, let alone ranked. So she does not, by definition, deserve a title shot. And you look at Colby Covington, he's supposedly getting the next title shot against Leon Edwards. He doesn't have a single win over a top 15 ranked opponent that is currently in the welterweight top 15. Now, the other comparison you can make, Colby Covington, always saying ridiculous stuff, always saying cringy stuff, which you have Julianna Pena doing the same thing. And I think a key difference, though, between these two, especially when you look at their personalities, Colby Covington's is an act that is far different from who he actually is. And he just puts this on for attention, and he just looks for clicks, and he looks for attention. And also Colby Covington's inactive. And then also when you look at deserving title shots, because Julianna Pena doesn't deserve anything, Colby Covington doesn't deserve anything. He hasn't fought in over a year. He doesn't have a win over a current top 15 ranked fighter, and he's turned down multiple fights in the past. His claim to, the elite of welterweight is losing twice to Kamaru Usman, once getting stopped. And I really think one of the key differences is Julianna Pena may get a title shot, but there's no one more deserving underneath of her. I'm not saying she's deserving, but there's nobody that's deserving. So if you want to say, oh, well, she doesn't deserve it, she's not skipping over anyone anyway. So it doesn't really matter if she's deserving or not, because there's nobody else to take that spot right now. And for Colby Covington, there's a bunch of different people that can take that spot. And also, I feel like Julianna Pena is just a slightly more exaggerated personality of herself, where Colby Covington is just completely different. And Colby Covington is very cringy, says ridiculous things. Julianna Pena, very cringy, says ridiculous things. Even though I think she's won 3 out of her last 6, to be honest, which is crazy to me. And you have Colby Covington, who's won 2 out of his last 4, so they're 50-50 in the last few fights. But I really do believe Julianna Pena is saying this is the entertainment business. I do believe she's playing up that personality. She's playing up that, the WWE simps like to say, the heel role. And I really do believe Julianna Pena is attempting to do something in the UFC that we have not seen since Ronda Rousey. I don't know if she's going to achieve it, but Julianna Pena, every time she fights, whether her skill set is good or not, if you compare Julianna Pena's skill set to someone like Colby Covington, I understand Colby Covington is actually an elite fighter. Julianna Pena is not a very good fighter, but for her weight class, the division she's fighting in, she's a top fighter, which is unfortunate to say. That just shows how low the skill set or skill level of women's bantamweight is, and the lack of the UFC developing that division. But I also believe that Julianna Pena, what she sees when she looks at Amanda Nunes leaving, she sees an opportunity to get that title back. She sees there's a lot of UFC simps out there who look at Julianna Pena and they think she's hot. They think she's attractive. I'm not saying that she's not, but what I'm saying is there is people out there who will simp over Julianna Pena. A lot of MMA fans will. And then you combine that with the fact if she wins a title, then you combine that with the fact where win or lose, she's relatively exciting. She goes out there and fights like she has some type of physical disability, especially on the feet. But she goes out there to fight. She goes out there and puts on exciting performances. And that is all the makings of a star in the UFC. And I believe the UFC will see this personality of Julianna Pena. She's always been loud. That's kind of what got her the initial title shot against Amanda Nunes. And I think the UFC will get behind her. I think they'll try to promote Julianna Pena. And she doesn't mind being hated, just like Colby Covington is trying to promote and build himself over being hated. Now, I don't think either one of them is a star currently. I know people pretend Colby Covington's a star. He sold under 400,000 pay-per-views. We have that from a reliable source. Julianna Pena, I don't know how much UFC 277 sold. My guess is that sold somewhere around 200,000 in the 200,000 range. Maybe the rematch against Amanda Nunes, maybe. And I don't think either one of them is a star, but I think Julianna Pena sees that void that Amanda Nunes left. Amanda Nunes was never a star. And I honestly believe, even though the skill set is so vastly different between Julianna Pena and Amanda Nunes is leaps and bounds, universe is better in the skill set. Julianna Pena has that loud mouth. She has the simps of MMA who will back her no matter what, and she has a relatively exciting, fan-friendly fighting style. So all those things together, Julianna Pena is going to attempt to become a women's MMA star, and that is exactly what she's doing by being so vocal. And I think she has a more likely opportunity to succeed than Colby Covington does, because Colby Covington, I enjoy his fight style, but a lot of the fans don't like grappling, especially when you just grapple and just grind on guys in the clinch and then take them down. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy Colby Covington's fighting style, but I think Julianna Pena is taking a little bit of what Colby Covington has done, and she's mixing it into her own style, and she's attempting to build herself up as a women's MMA star. And what I believe is honestly going to happen out of what's going to come out of all this, I think Julianna Pena fights Raquel Pennington next. And I think what's going to happen is Julianna Pena, I favor her to beat Raquel Pennington, but it could go either way. And then I think what the UFC is expecting, they're expecting Holly Holm to defeat Mayra Bueno Silva, and then Julianna Pena will fight Holly Holm down the line. Now, if Holly Holm beats Julianna Pena for the title, they'll probably run it back in a rematch. And then let's say Julianna Pena wins the rematch, then they'll run a trilogy because they like the name value of Holly Holm, because the UFC has always pushed Holly Holm because she's known as the one that dethroned Ronda Rousey. So I think no matter what goes on in the women's bantamweight division, I think you'll see basically hot potato with the title over the next couple years, and I hope the UFC tries to develop the division. Otherwise, I'd be perfectly fine with them closing down women's bantamweight. Like, I believe that they are going to close down women's featherweight, and it's going to be non-existent anymore, and it hasn't been existent for the last few years. Basically, Nunes was up there just kind of fighting whoever could possibly go there, and Felicia Spencer, and there hasn't been a real women's featherweight fight since Cyborg, honestly. And I know technically the people Nunes fought were featherweight fighters, but we're talking Megan Anderson, we're talking Felicia Spencer. I mean, come on now. Come on now. So the featherweight division's gone. I believe the bantamweight division, the UFC will attempt to build Julianna Pena into a star, and then they will try to build Holly Holm's name back up, even though it's already, at least known in the MMA community. They will try to build them against each other and attempt to make them fight each other multiple times and kind of keep the division alive for the next 2 or so years while they try to figure out the rest of the division. Now, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I don't think Julianna Pena is as delusional as people are making her out to be. And also, I think she's more well-spoken than Colby Covington. When I watched this whole interview, and it was painful to watch it, honestly, but I think she's more well-spoken. She's not stumbling over words. She's not as cringy. She is cringy, but she's not as cringy. And I just really believe that Julianna Pena has an opportunity to be a bigger star than Colby Covington. Let me know what you think about that down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching.